The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the most powerful place in the universe. Inside, massive alien beings sat in their floating seats, looking down at the lone human standing in the center. The air was thick with arrogance, the kind that came from species who had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood straight, hands behind his back. His face showed no fear, no anger, only patience. He had traveled across the galaxy for this meeting, and he knew exactly how it would go. At the highest seat of the council, Overlord Selphar, a reptilian being with shimmering blue scales, leaned forward. His voice was deep and filled with amusement. "Humanity," he said, stretching the word like it was a joke. "You wish to join the Galactic Council." A soft chuckle spread through the hall. Aliens of different shapes and sizes, some with tentacles, some with fur, some with glowing eyes, watched with interest. They all thought the same thing. Humans were small, weak, and insignificant. Carter did not react. He had expected this. A tall, insectoid alien with razor-sharp mandibles clicked its jaws. "Your ships are slow. Your weapons are outdated. Your bodies are fragile. What could your kind possibly offer us?" Another alien, a floating gas-based entity, let out a deep hum. "The Galactic Council is a place for empires. Your people are barely out of your solar system. Why should we waste our time with you?" More laughter, more sneers, more insults. Carter let them talk. He let them mock him. Let them believe they were superior. Finally, when they were finished, he spoke. His voice was calm, steady. "Perhaps you are right," Carter said. "Perhaps humanity is not ready." Some of the aliens smiled. They thought he had given up. Then, Carter took a small device from his pocket and pressed a button. A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber, and the laughter stopped. Floating in the air was an image of a massive fleet, thousands of warships, sleek, dark, deadly, unlike anything the Council had ever seen. The ships had no visible thrusters, no exhaust trails. They were not made of metal or any known material. They looked alive. The Council members leaned forward. Their eyes widened. Their arrogance wavered. Carter let them stare for a moment before he spoke again. "You call our technology primitive," he said, his voice now sharper. "But tell me, can any of your ships do this?" The hologram changed. The warships in the image vanished, then reappeared on the other side of the screen. Instantly, gasps filled the chamber. Some aliens jumped back in shock. Others whispered in their own languages. Faster than light travel was common, but this was different. There were no warp gates, no hyperspace jumps. The ships had teleported. The reptilian overlord Selthar's claws tightened on his throne. His confident smirk was gone. Now there was only silence. Carter took a step forward. "You believe we are weak, that we are small, that we are insignificant." His eyes swept across the room. Now they were listening. "You laughed at us. But tell me, Council." He paused. Let the silence drag. Then, with a small, knowing smile, he asked, "Are you still laughing?" The council chamber, once filled with arrogance and laughter, was now silent. The alien leaders stared at the hologram, their eyes filled with confusion, disbelief, and fear. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood tall, his hands behind his back, waiting. He had expected this reaction. He had counted on it. They were not ready for the truth. Finally, Overlord Selphar broke the silence. His voice was no longer mocking. It was careful, calculating. "This must be a trick," he said, though his sharp claws tapped against the armrest of his throne. A sign of unease. A mere illusion. Carter smiled slightly. "If you believe that, then come and see for yourself." The room tensed. A challenge. The insectoid delegate, Crickstall, clicked his mandibles. "You would allow us to inspect these ships?" His black eyes narrowed with suspicion. Carter nodded. "Of course." Murmurs spread through the council. This was unexpected. The human was too calm, too confident. If it was a deception, why invite them to witness it? If it was real, then what did it mean for the balance of power? Zelthar leaned forward. "Very well," he said. "We accept." Carter inclined his head. "Then prepare your finest ships. We will meet at the neutral zone in 3 cycles." Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. As the great doors closed behind him, Carter tapped his earpiece. A voice answered immediately. "Sir." "They took the bait," Carter said. His voice was calm, but beneath it was something else. Something cold. A pause. Then the voice replied, "Understood." Activating the fleet. Somewhere in deep space, something stirred. Something that had been waiting. And soon, the galaxy would know the truth. The Galactic Council wasted no time. Overlord Zelthar and his advisors selected 3 of the most powerful warships in their fleet, ships that had crushed rebellions, destroyed planets, and maintained the Council's iron grip over the galaxy for centuries. These ships, known as the 3 Fangs, had never lost a battle. Each was the pride of a different ruling species. The Bloodfang, a massive auxiliary dreadnought, bristling with plasma cannons and shielded by an energy field strong enough to survive a supernova. The Silent Fang, a stealth frigate from the insectoid Krixtal, equipped with cloaking devices and neutron torpedoes that could erase ships from existence. The Void Fang, a battleship from the gaseous Varix, built with advanced matter-disrupting weapons that could turn solid metal into dust. The message was clear. The Council was not going as guests. They were going as hunters. In their minds, humanity had made a mistake. They had shown their hand too early. If their warships were truly powerful, then the Council would learn their secrets. If it was a bluff, then humanity would be crushed before they became a threat. Zelthar sat in the command throne of the Bloodfang, watching as the warships entered the neutral zone, a vast expanse of deep space between the major empires. It was an empty void, a place where no planets, no stations, no civilizations existed. A perfect place for war. "Status." Zelthar growled. Auxiliary officer saluted. "Human fleet detected, Overlord." The screen flickered to life. The alien warlords leaned forward. This was the moment they had been waiting for. They expected to see a small, outdated fleet, maybe a few heavy cruisers, some old battle-worn frigates, nothing that could challenge the 3 Fangs. Instead, they saw something else, something that should not exist. The human fleet was there, but it was wrong. There were no visible engines, no energy trails, no traditional hull designs. The ships floated in perfect stillness, like statues in the dark void. They were pitch black, absorbing the light around them. Massive, silent, unreadable. And then, the Council ship's sensors failed. "What is this?" Krixtal hissed, his mandibles clicking in confusion. "Our scanners cannot detect their mass. No heat signatures, no energy readings." Zelthar narrowed his eyes. Impossible. But the evidence was right in front of them. The human warships did not register as objects. They cast no signals, no radiation, no signs of life. It was as if they were not there at all. A cold shiver ran through the bridge. Then, without warning, the human fleet moved. Not in a normal way. There was no acceleration, no inertia, no burning thrusters. One moment, they were still. The next, they were somewhere else. The Bloodfang's crew gasped. The Void Fang's officers panicked. The Silent Fang's stealth systems flickered as the alien crews desperately tried to lock onto something, anything. Nothing worked. Then, a transmission came through. A voice. Calm. Steady. "Ambassador Daniel Carter." "Welcome," he said. "Are you ready to see what humanity has become?" Before Zelthar could respond, the human warships attacked. Not with plasma cannons, not with missiles, not with anything the Council had ever seen before. Space itself rippled. and the three fangs, the greatest warships in the galaxy, began to disappear. Panic erupted across the alien warships as the impossible unfolded before their eyes. The Bloodfang sensors failed to register what was happening, yet the crew could see it with their own eyes. The Silent Fang, proud master of stealth, flickered in and out of existence, its hull warping as if space itself had turned against it. The Void Fang's once mighty shields, capable of withstanding planetary bombardments, crackled and collapsed without a single shot fired. Zelthar gripped his throne, his claws digging into the armrest, his reptilian eyes wide with something he had not felt in centuries: fear. The human warships were not attacking in any way the Council had ever encountered. There were no energy discharges, no visible weapons fire, no fleets maneuvering for tactical positions. Instead, space itself twisted and trembled around them. Entire sections of the Bloodfang seemed to stretch and bend, their metal frames groaning as if being pulled apart by unseen hands. Zelthar's officers screamed as the walls behind them folded inward, swallowing consoles and crew members alike. He turned toward his main display, demanding answers, but his communications officer was gone. Not dead, not injured, simply gone, as if he had never existed. His chair sat empty, still spinning from where he had once been. Across the fleet, the same horror played out. On the Silent Fang, Krixtal's warriors fought desperately to activate their cloaking field, only to find that they were the ones turning invisible. Their bodies faded, leaving only empty armor behind. The Void Fang, once the pride of the gaseous Varic species, erupted in a silent burst of disintegration as its crew simply ceased to be. Zelthar roared, slamming his fist on the command console. "Fire everything. Destroy them." His gunners obeyed. The Bloodfang's heavy plasma cannons powered up, glowing with the energy of a collapsing star. They unleashed a barrage that could have reduced entire moons to dust. But before the first shot could even cross the distance between them, the human ships were gone. Not moved, not dodged, gone. And then, in an instant, they reappeared. Closer. The entire fleet of alien warships trembled, alarms blaring, as the human vessels surrounded them in perfect formation. They had not traveled through hyperspace. They had not warped or engaged their engines. They had simply ceased to be in one place and reappeared in another, defying every law of physics the Council had ever known. Zelthar's heart pounded in his chest. He had seen countless wars, had destroyed entire civilizations, had wiped species from existence, but never had he felt this. Never had he faced something that could unmake reality itself. Then the voice returned. "You believe yourselves rulers of the galaxy." Ambassador Carter's voice echoed across every remaining ship. "You believe humanity was weak, primitive. You were wrong." His tone was not angry. It was not arrogant. It was disappointed. Zelthar opened his mouth to respond, to demand answers, to try to salvage some part of this disaster. But then he saw it. The Bloodfang's hull, his mighty, indestructible warship, was fading, not breaking apart, not exploding, just fading. His own claws, once so strong, so powerful, were becoming translucent. He could see through them. He could see through himself. Terror gripped him as he realized what was happening. The humans were not killing them. They were erasing them. One by one, ship by ship, the Galactic Council's mighty fleet vanished into nothing. No wreckage, no debris. Just silence. The last thing Overlord Zelthar saw was the cold, emotionless face of Ambassador Carter staring at him from the view screen. Then, darkness. And then, nothing. A vast, unnatural silence settled over the battlefield. Where once the Galactic Council's mightiest warships had floated, only empty space remained. No wreckage. No debris. No sign that they had ever existed. It was as if the Council's greatest warriors, their most powerful weapons, had been erased from time itself. And yet, the human fleet remained, floating motionless in the void, watching. Inside the command center of the lead human warship, Ambassador Daniel Carter stood calmly, hands behind his back, observing the display before him. The alien fleet had been powerful, yes, deadly, but irrelevant. Humanity had evolved beyond the need for traditional warfare. They no longer fought with weapons. They fought with reality itself. A soft chime sounded in his earpiece. "Sir," a voice said. "Phase 1 complete." Carter nodded. "Understood. Begin Phase 2. Across the vastness of space, unseen systems activated. The Council's homeworlds, their stations, their strongholds, all marked. The destruction of the Three Fangs had been a demonstration, nothing more. A whisper of what humanity could do. Now, it was time for a message. On the distant world of Selvaris Prime, the heart of the Galactic Council's power, Overlord Sulfar awoke with a gasp. His breathing was ragged, his body drenched in cold sweat. He was in his private chamber, inside the towering spire of Dominion. His massive, clawed hands gripped the silk sheets of his bed. He looked around wildly. Was it a dream? No, it had been real. He had been on the Bloodfang. He had seen the human warships. He had watched as his greatest fleet vanished. And yet, he was here, alive. His chest heaved as he tried to make sense of it. His mind struggled to process what had happened. He pressed a communicator on his wrist. "Command." He barked. "Report." A long silence followed. Then, a shaky voice answered. "Oh, Overlord, something is wrong." Zelfar's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "We have no record of the fleet." The officer's voice was barely a whisper. "The Bloodfang, the Silent Fang, the Void Fang. They're not in our archives. It's as if they never existed." A cold chill ran down Selfar's spine. Impossible. He had commanded that fleet for centuries. It was the pride of the Council. And yet, when he tried to recall their construction records, their battle history, his mind came up blank. He clutched his head, panic rising. The humans hadn't just destroyed his ships. They had erased them from reality. But how? What were they? His communicator crackled again. Another voice, terrified. "Overlord." The humans. Static. Then silence. Zelthar growled in frustration. He stood, throwing on his ceremonial robes, and stormed toward the control chamber at the top of the spire. But as he moved through the halls, something felt wrong. The guards standing at their posts looked empty, lifeless. Their eyes stared ahead, unblinking. They did not acknowledge him. They did not move. It was as if they were frozen in time. Zelthar stopped. "What is happening?" he hissed. No answer. He reached out and touched one of the guards. The moment his claw met the alien's shoulder, the guard crumbled into dust. Zelthar jerked back in horror. The dust drifted away, vanishing into nothingness. He turned to the others. One by one, the guards began to fade. Their bodies blurred, their forms losing shape, as if they were being unwritten from existence. Zelthar staggered backward, his mind racing. Then the lights flickered. A low hum filled the air. And suddenly, he was not alone. Standing at the far end of the corridor was a figure. A human. Tall, calm, dressed in the pristine uniform of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. Ambassador Daniel Carter. He stood there, hands still clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. His presence alone sent a wave of terror through Selfar's bones. The Overlord bared his teeth. "What have you done?" Carter tilted his head slightly. "We gave you a choice," he said, his voice quiet but filled with finality. "You chose mockery, arrogance. You believed humanity was weak. You believed we could be dismissed." His eyes locked onto Zelfar's. "You were wrong." Zelfar's claws twitched, his mind screaming for an escape, for a way out of this nightmare. "You cannot do this," he snarled. "The Council is gone," Carter interrupted. His tone was not cruel, not triumphant, simply factual. Their power, their fleets, their history. He stepped forward. "Tell me, Overlord, do you remember their names?" Zelthar opened his mouth, then closed it. His mind grasped for memories that were not there. His allies, his rivals, the species that had ruled alongside him for centuries. Gone. The Overlord's breathing became shallow. Carter's gaze softened slightly, almost pitying. "You believed you were the masters of the galaxy," he said, "but the truth is, you were never in control." He reached into his pocket and pressed a small device. The world around them shimmered, and suddenly, Zelthar was no longer in his spire, no longer on his homeworld. He was in the void of space, floating, drifting, alone. The stars stretched endlessly around him. The silence was absolute. No fleet, no empire, no council. His body remained intact, yet he felt no hunger, no pain. Time itself no longer seemed to apply to him. He was trapped, frozen in an endless abyss, left only with the knowledge of what had happened. He had mocked humanity. He had laughed at their weakness. And now he was the last reminder that the Galactic Council had ever existed. Zelthar floated in the silent void, his mind unraveling with each passing moment. There was no sound, no sensation of time, only nothingness. The stars remained distant, cold and uncaring, stretching endlessly in all directions. He had been Overlord of the Galactic Council, ruler of 1,000 worlds, commander of fleets that had brought civilizations to their knees. And now, he was nothing. At first, he had struggled, thrashing against the unseen force that held him in this endless abyss. He had roared in defiance, demanded to be released, threatened vengeance. But there was no one to hear him, no fleet to come to his aid, no empire left to answer his calls. His words vanished into the void as if they had never been spoken. Then came the memories, or rather, the lack of them. Zelthar tried to remember his generals, the ones who had led his campaigns of conquest. Their faces were gone. He tried to recall the names of the species that had once served under the Council, the planets he had ruled with an iron fist. Empty. He reached for the knowledge that had once made him powerful, the strength of his warships, the strategies that had won him countless battles. But there was nothing. It was as if history itself had rewritten him, as if he had been severed from reality. And then he understood. The humans hadn't simply defeated the Council. They had erased it. They had removed it from time, from memory, from existence itself. The Galactic Council had ruled for millennia, shaping the destiny of the galaxy. Now, it was as if it had never been. There would be no records of its tyranny, no monuments of its power. To the rest of the universe, it had never even existed. Zelthar's breathing quickened. His claws twitched uselessly in the weightless abyss. The fear he felt now was unlike anything he had known before. This was not death. This was something worse. And then, a voice. Calm, steady, unshaken. "Are you beginning to understand?" Zelthar's head snapped up, his reptilian eyes wide. In front of him, floating effortlessly in the void, was Ambassador Daniel Carter. The human stood as if gravity still held him, hands behind his back, his expression unreadable. His uniform remained pristine, untouched by the abyss. His eyes held no hatred, no cruelty, only certainty. Zelthar bared his fangs. "What have you done?" His voice was hoarse, weak. Carter regarded him for a long moment before speaking. What needed to be done? Zelthar's rage flared. You dare wipe out an empire. You dare erase an entire council." His claws flexed, though he knew they were useless here. "This is monstrous. This is." Carter's voice cut through his words like a knife. "And what did you do when your fleets glassed planets that refuse your rule? When you laughed as civilizations burned? When you turned entire species into nothing more than servants to your council?" Zelthar opened his mouth, but no words came. Carter took a slow step forward, though the void beneath him remained unchanged. "You mocked us. You dismissed us. You believed we were weak, but humanity has survived worse than you. We have fought wars that broke the stars. We have endured extinction and returned stronger." His voice remained calm, yet each word carried the weight of an unshakable truth. Zelthar's breathing was shallow now. His mind grasped for any argument, any defense. There was none. Carter continued, "We could have destroyed you in an instant, but destruction is temporary. Death is meaningless when others remember your name." His eyes locked onto Zelthar's, and for the first time, the Overlord understood the depth of his mistake. This is true extinction." Zelthar shuddered. "Why?" Carter's expression remained unchanged. "Because power built on fear always falls. Because the galaxy will be better without you. Because we are done being laughed at." Zelthar's vision blurred. His body felt lighter. He looked down at his hands. They were fading. His scales, his claws, his very form was becoming transparent. He was being unmade. His mind raced, desperation clawing at him. "You can't do this," he whispered. You can't just erase history." Carter's gaze was steady. "We already have." Zelthar opened his mouth for one last scream, one final plea, but there was no sound. His body vanished, his thoughts unraveled, his very existence gone. And then, there was only the void. In the silence of the void, nothing remained. No sign of the Galactic Council, no trace of Overlord Zelthar. It was as if they had never existed. The galaxy moved forward, unaware that a great empire had once ruled, unaware that an arrogant overlord had sought to dominate humanity. There was no memory of them, no records, no stories. And yet, humanity still stood. Aboard the TSS Retribution, Ambassador Daniel Carter watched the display before him. The operation was complete. The Council had been erased, not just from history, not just from records, but from time itself. Even those who had once feared them, those who had once served them, they no longer remembered. The bridge crew of the Retribution sat in silence, staring at the screen, knowing they had just witnessed something beyond comprehension. A war had been fought without a single shot fired. An empire had fallen without a single world burning. One of the officers, a young lieutenant, swallowed hard. "Sir, was it necessary?" His voice was careful, uncertain. Carter turned his gaze toward him, his expression unreadable. "Would you rather they still ruled?" The lieutenant hesitated. He had seen the Council's cruelty. He had heard the stories of the worlds they had enslaved, the civilizations they had wiped out for defying them. But still, "This is something else," he finally said. "We didn't just defeat them. We erased them." Carter nodded slowly. "Yes." He turned back toward the display, his voice calm, yet firm. "The Council ruled through fear. They believed their power made them untouchable. They thought they could mock us, dismiss us, and continue their tyranny." His hands clasped behind his back. They were wrong. The bridge remained silent. No one argued. No one questioned what had been done. Because deep down, they all knew the truth. For centuries, the Galactic Council had crushed species beneath its rule. They had enslaved, destroyed, and dictated the fate of entire worlds. They had seen humanity as weak, as insignificant, as unworthy of respect. But humanity had proven them wrong. For the first time in history, the galaxy was truly free. A soft chime sounded from Carter's console. A message. He glanced at it and allowed himself a small smile. Across the stars, colonies, worlds, and entire civilizations were moving forward, without the shadow of the Council looming over them. They did not know what had happened. They would never know. And that was the point. A final transmission came through, a simple confirmation from the AI overseeing the operation. All traces removed, no anomalies detected, galactic history intact. Carter exhaled, then turned to his crew. "It's done." A deep sense of finality settled over the room. The war was over, not with fire, not with blood, but with something far greater. Humanity had not just defeated the Galactic Council. They had erased their very existence. And the galaxy would never know.